So in this example, we've been given the graph of a sinusoidal curve, and we are going to determine what is the function that has the following graph. So based off of what we said in the previous video, we're going to run through our checklist. So first thing will be the midline. To determine the midline, I notice that the maximum value that we have is positive 3. The minimum value is negative 3. The midline is going to be halfway in between those. It's not how you spell max. There we go. So the maximum value plus the minimum value, all over 2, will let us know what that's equal to. So 3 plus negative 3, all over 2. That, of course, simplifies into 0. You'll also notice that there are several points along here that are all on the midline right at y equals 0. Second up, amplitude. The amplitude is the vertical distance from the midline, y equals 0, to a maximum, or from the midline to a minimum. And we can see in both of those cases that we are going up to 3 units. So that lets us know that the absolute value of A is going to be 3, which lets us know that the actual value of A will be either positive 3 or negative 3. We'll make a judgment call on which one of those it is in just a moment. Next up is going to be the period. Now the period is supposed to be the horizontal distance from a maximum to a maximum, or from a minimum to a minimum. So either this, right here, or we could do this. In either case, what we're looking at is a change in x. So if you take x2 minus x1, or x2 minus x1, we should get something good out of that. If I go maximum to maximum, the period ends at 3 pi over 8, and it begins at negative pi over 8. Subtracting those gives me 4 pi over 8, or simplified, that would be pi over 2. Whereas if I were to go from minimum to minimum, the period would end at 5 pi over 8, and it would begin at pi over 8. Performing that subtraction gives me the same result of 4 pi over 8, which reduces down to pi over 2. Now, pulling a formula from the previous video, omega is going to be equal to 2 pi divided by whatever the period is. We just calculated the period to be pi over 2. Division by a fraction is the same as multiplication by the reciprocal. We'll refer to the 2 pi as 2 pi over 1, and we'll multiply by 2 over pi, which will wind up giving us 4 after we cancel the pi's out. Next up, determining the mother function and whether A is positive or negative. So I'm going to point out that when we're at x equals 0, which would be the start of a period, we are at the midline. In addition to being at the midline, well, if we are at the midline, we should point out, is the function increasing or decreasing there? And as you can see, as we're passing through the midline at x equals 0, the graph is going in the downward direction as we move to the right. That would make it decreasing. There we go, decreasing. That's an I swear. The fact that it was the midline lets us know that our mother function is the sine function. The fact that it's decreasing lets me know that A is going to be a negative value. Now with the mother function of y equals the sine of x, that means that our transformed function will be y is equal to A times the sine of omega x plus b. We said that A will be either plus or minus 3. We also determined that A will be negative. So y equals negative 3 times the sine of, we calculated omega to be 4, and the midline was y equals 0, letting us know that b is 0. Final answer for this one, y equals negative 3 times the sine of 4x.